The doors to the Viridian tea house are open once more. Hello everyone. I've got 3 books to talk about today, plus some fantastic tea, so if you're ready, let's do this. So as always, let me give a shout out to Arapahoe Library and Inglewood Library for having these books that I'm getting ready to review. And as they say in the Arthur cartoon, having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. So I am grateful to have 4 different library cards and 4 different library systems to choose from. And I haven't really been disappointed. I really haven't. So if you're ready, let's begin. So the first book comes from Arapahoe Library, and it is The Cloisters by Katy Hayes. This is a slice of dark academia. And if you're into dark academia, I'm sure you've probably heard about The Cloisters. Let me just read the dust jacket for you. Let's see. Behind the closed doors of the cloisters, shocking secrets and a mysterious deck of tarot cards spark a deadly power game within a close-knit group of researchers. When Anne Stillwell arrives in New York City, she expects to spend her summer working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Instead, she finds herself assigned to the Cloisters, a Gothic museum and garden renowned for its collection of medieval art and its enigmatic researchers. Patrick Rowland, the charismatic curator specializing in the history of tarot, Rachel Mondre, Patrick's brilliant curatorial associate, and Leo Bitberg, the gardener charged with cultivating the museum's poisonous plants. Eager to escape her troubled past in rural Washington, Anne is happy to indulge the researchers' more outlandish theories, only to find that their fascination with ancient divination runs deeper than academic obsession. Patrick is determined to prove that medieval tarot holds the key to accurately telling the future. When Anne discovers a breakthrough in the form of a cryptic deck of 15th century tarot cards, she finds herself at the center of a dangerous game of power, seduction, and ambition. As their circle reaches its breaking point, Anne must decide if the tarot cards can teach her not only about the past, but also about the future. And for the author Katy Hayes, she is a writer and adjunct art history professor in California, where she teaches rural students from Truckee to Tacoma. She holds an MA in art history from Williams College and pursued her PhD at UC Berkeley. Having previously worked at major art institutions, including the Clark Art Institute and San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, she now lives with her husband and their dog, Queso, in Olympic Valley, California. The Cloisters is her first novel. Like I said, this was very much a little slice of dark academia, and I've read enough dark academia before it was called dark academia to know that I guess with certain genres you have to follow a certain equation. And for the Cloisters, well, generally for me, this is my opinion only, you have a person that comes from a small town or a rural area, kind of mousy, kind of introverted, doesn't really get out, doesn't have friends, and suddenly through happenstance they end up at a school or a museum of art or some hollowed hall where all the people that they deal with are very eccentric but very intelligent. Nobody's an idiot, and those people are harboring a deep, dark secret. And the person gets involved, and there's a love interest usually, and that experience changes that person's life, usually for the worse, not really for the better. They think it's better, but at the end it's kind of worse. And that's how I felt about The Cloisters in terms of Anne meeting all these people in the cloisters. I did read it. Overall, I liked it, but I also felt that something was missing. I made the mistake of reading Goodreads reviews, and a lot of people trashed this book. They were like, this isn't worth it, it's so boring, the first half, it's so dull, there's no twist. I kind of have to agree with them, honestly. Yeah, at the beginning, it was kind of a slow burn, but I'm one of those people who enjoys reading about scholars, pursuing knowledge that the rest of the world has ignored for, smartphones. And I really enjoyed the first half. When the twist happened, if it really was a twist, I didn't think it was a twist. And the ending was kind of a letdown. And I remember finishing the book going, okay, it missed something. It missed the mark, I think. But I will say the research that Katy Hayes did regarding tarot, phenomenal. You can tell she did her research, and it wasn't just this data dump. Again, my opinion. So The Cloisters by Katy Hayes, sorry about the glare, receives Viridian Tea House's 3 pots of tea. And it was a solid 3 pots of tea, quite honestly. I felt like, I was going along. I was like, okay, I'm getting into this. All right, it's a slow burn. And then it just kind of flaked off a little bit. And I thought, I'm not really getting into this. I finished it, but I felt like something was lacking. So, but yes, The Cloisters by Katy Hayes, little slice of dark academia, and many thanks to Arapahoe Library for having this book. So the second book I want to talk about today, 6 Degrees of Separation. So it was one day where I was kind of taking off the morning from work, and I discovered on Prime this movie called Night Train to Lisbon with Jeremy Irons in it. And I love Jeremy Irons. I worship that man. And I really enjoyed the story. So I looked up the author and I was like, oh, okay, let me see if I can find the book. Couldn't find the book at the library, but then I discovered another one of his books by the author, Pascal Mercier. The name of this book is called Leia. Again, sorry for the glare. Oh, that's showing me. But Leia. And when I saw the cover of a woman holding a violin and looking forlorn, I thought, I'm gonna like this book. I like any book that deals with a violin player because I play the violin. But let me read the dust jacket for you. Let's see. Pascal Mercier's Night Train to Lisbon mesmerized readers around the world, becoming an international bestseller. Now with Leia, Mercier tells the unforgettable story of a father's boundless love for his daughter, as her ruthless ambition to become a celebrated violinist drives them both to the edge of destruction. It starts with the death of Martin van Vlie's wife. I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, because I tried so many different pronunciations of the name. Grief-stricken, his young daughter Leia withdraws into the darkness of mourning. Then one day she hears the unfamiliar sound of a violin being played in the hall of a train station, and she is captivated. Revitalized by its delicate power, she vows to learn the instrument. And her father, witnessing this awakening, promises to do everything in his power to keep her happy, no matter the cost. Leia's all-consuming desire leads her to become one of the finest young players in the world, excelling in competitions and recitals. But as she blossoms into a musical prodigy and her popularity flourishes in concert halls and social circles, Leia grows more distant from her father. Determined to hold her close, Martin is pushed to commit a desperate act that threatens to destroy their lives. Impassioned, tender, and deeply insightful, Leia delves into the demanding challenges of artistic excellence, the damaging effects of sacrifice, as well as the transformative experience of creative pursuit. In this breathtaking new novel, Mercier deftly portrays the poignant ways we strive to understand ourselves and our families. And a professor of philosophy, Pascal Mercier, was born in 1944 in Bern, Switzerland. He is the author of Perlman's Silence and the international bestseller Night Train to Lisbon, which was adapted into a film. He lives in Berlin. Well, like I said, any book that deals with a violinist, I'm going to read. I can't help it. And don't make the violinist tragic, because I will devour it. This took me a while to read, and it wasn't because I was bored with the story. It was just, you would think that a book this size, you could just read it in an afternoon, and maybe some people did. But it took me 6 days, and I felt like I needed to consume every word. Again, this is just me. I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss any point. I didn't want to stop reading and go, wait a minute, when did she dissolve into madness? I don't remember that. I watched her fall, and she kept falling and falling and falling. And the madness and the obsession regarding her playing the violin was almost cringing. It was almost cringeworthy. And the ending, it wasn't a surprise. Well, I will say this. The two parts to the ending, one I was surprised about. The one I was surprised about, and one I wasn't. But yeah, this is the kind of book you read. I hate to be stereotypical, but with a cup of like smoky black tea on a rainy day, and you don't have to go anywhere, and you're listening to sorrowful opera or violin music, because I can't imagine doing anything happy while reading this book. Now, having said that, I enjoyed it. I loved it. Like I said, I savored every word. I truly did. And I showed it to my violin teacher, and I was like, what is it about people writing books about violins and the violinists who are mad? And I thought, oh yeah, I wrote a book like that. Oh, but I loved it. It was a beautiful, dark dream. It wasn't a nightmare. Some people might say that. I saw it as a dream. Like the scene where Leia is young and she hears this person dressed up playing the violin for the first time, and how Pascal Mercier describes her hypnotic gaze at the woman and at the violin and listening to the sound. It's beautiful. In fact, let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Talk amongst yourselves. Here we go. She wasn't a tall woman, he said, interrupting my thoughts, but she was standing on a pedestal and her torso loomed over the crowd. And my God, you would have fallen in love with her on the spot. The way you can fall in love with an overwhelmingly beautiful statue, but more easily, more quickly, and much, much more intensely. The first thing that had caught my eye was a torrent of gleaming black hair that seemed to flow once more from her pale, three-cornered hat and down onto the padded shoulders of her frock coat. And what a fairy tale frock coat it was. Faded pink and washed out yellow, the colors of a decaying palazzo. Against it there stood out many twisting dragon figures, red gold threads and red glass splinters that shimmered like priceless rubies. There was much of the mysterious East in that jacket, which reached almost to the woman's knees. She wore it open. You could see a pair of beige knee breeches, which were held at the top by an ochre-colored scarf with white silk stockings and black patent shoes. Above the scarf, she wore a ruched blouse of white satin that filled the wide stand-up collar with a collar of its own. She had drawn a piece of the soft white fabric over the stand-up collar, and on it her energetic chin pressed down on the violin. And to top it all, the broad hat with the three corners, its material similar to the frock coat, but heavier in effect because the edges were lined with black velvet. We'd made countless drawings of her together, Leah and I, and could never agree about some of the details. Van Vliet gulped. That was in the kitchen, at the big table that Cecile had brought to our marriage. Let's see. I can't remember how good Loyola's violin was. At the time, I had no idea. I became an expert in violin tones only on my insane journey to Cremona many years later. But in my memory, which would soon be overlaid and transformed by the imagination, that fateful instrument had a warm, voluminous, intoxicating, addictive sound. That sound which suited the aura of the masked woman so well, and her eyes, as I imagined them, had made me forget Leah for a moment, even though her hand had been in mine as always when she was surrounded by lots of people. Now I sensed her hand twisting away from mine, and I was amazed at how damp it was. Her damp hands and her concern for her hands, how they would determine the future, and for a time darken it. I still had no idea that this would come about when I looked down at her and saw her eyes, to which something incredible had happened. Leah held her head tilted to one side to get a better view of the violinist through a narrow gap in the crowd. The sinews in her neck were tested to breaking point. She had become her gaze, and her eyes shone. There's more to it, but I absolutely love the description of the violinist and Leah's reaction. Excuse me just for 1 second. There we go. I thought I took my notifications off. If you happen to see that notification, which I don't think shows up, my apologies. But I love the description of the violinist and Leah's reaction to it. And my apologies for pausing, but I had to find that specific part. But yes, this is a tragic, beautiful dream of a book. And I am so grateful that I was able to read it. And now I can't wait to read Night Train to Lisbon. I mean, it's whetting my appetite even more. So Leah, a novel by Pascal Mercier, receives 4 pots of tea from Viridian Tea House. Excellent book, and I already know I want to buy a copy of it to add to my own violin library. I am looking forward to having my own copy in the shelf. So very just beautiful, beautiful, tragic story. Beautiful. So the third book I want to talk about today, 6 Degrees of Separation. So let me phrase my words right here. I somewhat like A.S. Byatt. She wrote the book Possession. Couldn't really get into that, but I started to read the Frederica Quartet, which I've read the first 2 books, and I have the 3rd book on my shelf, and it's like, you need to read me, you really do. Sometimes I absolutely adore A.S. Byatt's work, and sometimes I have to put it down because it's just too much for me. Now, having said that, she has a sister, Margaret Drabble, and I tried to read her work, and I was like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. Well, funny how when you get older and you return to certain things, and you're like, oh, I get it now. So that is how I felt about The Sea Lady. And thanks to, again, Englewood Library for having both Leah and The Sea Lady. But this is The Sea Lady by Margaret Drabble, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Now, let me give you a forewarning. If you are not into somewhat dry British literature where there's really hardly any conversation, but you are being led by the hand by an experienced purveyor of words, then you will like Margaret Drabble's writing. I'm a big fan of Ian McEwan, and it kind of reminded me of some of his earlier work like Amsterdam and Atonement, The Cement Garden, that kind of thing. It wasn't a heavy book. It wasn't like Leia, but I still wanted to savor every word. I still wanted to just take it all in and not gloss over anything. And actually, I wrote like a page and a half of notes that just came to mind and questions, and I forgot to bring it, of course. But let me read the dust jacket for you. Two distinguished guests are traveling separately to a ceremony where they will meet for the first time in 3 decades. Both are apprehensive as they review the successes and failures of their public lives and their shared personal history. Humphrey Clark and Elsa Kelman met as children by the gray North Sea to which they are returning. Humphrey was a serious child drawn to the underwater world of marine biology. For her part, Elsa could kick and bite like a pony, and she was as brave as a scorpion, qualities that foreshadowed her dazzling transformation into a flamboyant feminist celebrity. Margaret Drabble traces the evolution of their careers and their passionately entangled relationship and brings them together again to see what they will make of their past and in what spirit they will be able to face the future. At her acute, witty best, Margaret Drabble examines the ways in which place, chance, and time merge to make us what we are. And about the author, she's the author of many novels and the editor of the Oxford Companion to English Literature. She lives in London, and that's all there is. But I loved The Sea Lady. I loved watching. Okay, so it starts off in like present day, and both excuse me just for 1 second. I really hate. There we go. Both main characters are in their 60s, and the sea is always there. It takes the form of marine biology. It takes the form of Elsa's dress. It takes the form of memories. And from there, you see how both of them grew up. One was very serious. One was very flamboyant. And how that one summer where they met, and you know that their lives are forever intertwined. And how at one point you see them as lovers, but the power between them is so strong, they're brought together and they're thrown back out into the world. So when they finally come together again after 3 decades, you kind of expect that same coming together, but by now, both have mellowed out in their own way. And in my thoughts, as I'm thinking about it now, it's like, I think now they might be able to actually have a future together. But very British, very literary. You're led by the hand, and I like that. And it was a very quiet, thoughtful, sometimes serious, sometimes funny novel. I noticed, though, that in reading Margaret Drabble's The Sea Lady, it was easier for me to read than her sister's work. And I know they're sisters, so they're going to write differently. But I remember thinking, like I'm not having to put the book down and be like, okay, I need to think about this. No, in fact, like I said, I was just writing notes, just writing things down that came to mind. And I found my literary thirst quenched. I hate to be cliche, but this quenched my thirst for a good, solid British literary novel. It quenched it. So Margaret Drabble's The Sea Lady receives 4 pots of tea from Viridian Tea House. I am looking forward to reading more of Margaret Drabble's works. I will say this, there was one part where I kind of stopped and paused, and I was like, okay, don't jump to conclusions. So when she talks about Humphrey as a child, and Humphrey is she is describing like his bedroom or something like that. And she uses the N word to emphasize a color. It was in brown drapes or something like that. And I paused and I was like, I immediately was like, what the hell? You know, you really had to use that word to describe a color of drapes or whatever it was. And I remember looking at Goodreads and I saw a reviewer say, you know, what the F? You know, is she a racist? You know, what the hell's going on? Why couldn't she just use, you know, I really am tired of these. There we go. You know, what the hell? Why is she using this word to describe this color? And I got angry. I really did. And then I quickly snuffed it out because I was like, well, this is being told in a period of around World War II, England, small town. That was what they probably would have used. So maybe I'm being naive, but I don't think that she was saying that word to be a racist or to be hateful. I think she was just, I still think she could have used another word, but I think she was emphasizing the period and the mindset of Humphrey when he was younger and the town and the people that he grew up around. So I kind of let it go, but it still kind of irked me a little bit because it's just, use another word to describe this color. Just why not? But anyway, I still give it 4 pots of tea, and I don't know. I still enjoyed it, and yeah, it just, you know, sometimes, tangent here, sometimes I've read classic works and I'm like, wow, you know, that was great, you know, it resonated with me, I loved it. And then I read about the author who's long dead, and it's like, oh, you hated Jews. Oh, you hated women. Oh, you hated black people. Oh, you were an alcoholic, and you hated this, and you hated that. And I'm looking at it from the eyes of a person in 2023. And I know we still have a long way to go, but we've come a long way as well. My opinion. Does it sully the work when you find out that thus and so was an alcoholic who beat his wife and hated black people, or this other person was against Jews, but they wrote this incredible work that people just love? Does it make the work worse? Does it put a mark on the work? And I've kind of struggled with that because there are a lot of classic works of literature that I absolutely adore. And then when I read the bio of the author, I'm like, oh God, we wouldn't have been friends back in the day. We really wouldn't have. So I'd be curious to know what you think. So if you would like to send an email or comment to this video, please let me know what you think, if anything. But yeah, I think that they were in a different time. They were in a different frame of mind than we are now. And so they wrote and they acted because that's how everybody else was. I'm not trying to give them a gold star and be like, well, given the time when some of these authors were around, it was different. So, I don't know, kind of like weird, write what you know. Anyway, that's just my tangent. I've always kind of struggled with that. I really have. And yeah, it's all about perspective, I guess. But anyway, on to the tea. Let me get off that soapbox, but on to the tea. So today's tea is Flower Power from Fresh Off the Cap here in Denver. And the ingredients are butterfly pea, chamomile, strawberries, and reishi mushrooms. So I am an amateur mycologist, and I know certain things about certain mushrooms. Reishi, I really didn't know too much about. So I looked up and I went to the website realmushrooms.com, and I will put their link on the video. And I was like, hey, Tell me about reishi mushrooms. Tell me. So according to them, they say that it improves the skin health, aids with a healthy metabolism. It's a great energy boost. It helps with neurological health, speeds up the muscle recovery, aids with your immune system. Let's see, calms the mind. It's good with hair health. So having reishi tea is a good boost to your body and to your mind as well. But like I said, I got that information from realmushrooms.com. And because there's butterfly pea in this, it's a beautiful dark blue, and I don't want to spill it. But anyway, it's the color of ink. Like, I let this steep for about 7 minutes, and I was like, when I came around to the kettle, I was like, whoa, that's really blue. But that's to be expected. One of my blends, Tea Muse Herbal Tisane, does have butterfly pea flower, and I tell my customers, let it steep. The longer it steeps, the bluer it's going to get. So in my lovely teacup here, like I said, I am drinking Flower Power Herbal Tisane from Fresh Off the Cap, featuring reishi mushrooms. It starts off florally sweet, and then it ends with that mushroomy taste, which I love mushrooms, so I love the taste of it. Well blended, very calming. Just kind of like, this is a nice tea to end your day with, quite honestly. So according to this website and to another website I looked at, if you find reishi tea, you can drink that all day, you know, of course, in moderation. But with all the benefits that I discovered off the website, yeah, this is quite lovely. I guess the florally, the sweet part of it that I'm getting is the strawberries. The chamomile and the butterfly pea, you know, I love their taste, so that's the florally part. But it goes floral sweet mushroomy, floral sweet mushroomy. But well done. Lauren, if you're watching this video, well done. This is great. This really is a good cup of tea. The only thing is I talked so long that my tea got a little bit cooler, but this is delicious, and I need to stop drinking it because I need this for the tea and water breathing meditation, which is going to wrap up our video for today. So for those of you who are new, welcome. This is all about breathing. We're not going to chant. There's no mantra. There's nothing to imagine. We're just going to focus on our breathing. We're going to start with deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Then we're just going to breathe for a number of counts. If you find yourself caught up in a thought, don't worry about it. That's normal. Just treat it like a TV screen. You pause it, say thinking silently to yourself, just thinking, and allow the thought to go on and focus on your breathing, kind of strengthening your meditation muscles. Then we're going to end with a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and then we'll have a sip of your favorite tea or a glass of water. You can either sit down like me or stand up or lay down, whatever's comfortable for you, and just make sure that you're in a room where you're not going to be disturbed. So if you're ready, let's begin. And now let's end this breathing meditation with a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Slowly open your eyes or allow your eyes to come back into focus. And now enjoy a sip of your water or tea. That is lovely. Well, that's the end of my video and rant about literature. But seriously, I really do think about things like that when it comes to classic literature, and especially reading about the author's bio. That's how I think. That's just my opinion. So yeah. But anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for watching me remove notifications off my phone. And many thanks to the authors, Margaret, Drabble, Pascal, Mercier, and Katy Hayes for their wonderful books. And the cool thing that I discovered today, the latest issue of Upton Tea Importers is out. So if you happen to follow Upton Tea Imports, you should have gotten your catalog in. And there's lots of goodies in here. I haven't looked through it yet, but I'm going to be ordering a lot of samples so that I can do reviews of the teas in future Viridian Tea House videos. But just to date, there hasn't been a tea that I've gotten from them that I absolutely just hated. So I'm looking forward to this. But yes, the fall quarterly of Upton Tea Imports is out. So go check it out and go order some tea. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care of yourself and each other. Read a lot of books. Hydrate. Raise your teacup high. And I forgot my sign, but to drink tea is to enjoy life. I will see you very soon. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to my rants.